My father-in-law didn't just insult me that night. He asked me to leave. Not because I shouted. Not because I disrespected anyone. But because I wasn't rich enough to sit at his table. And the worst part? My wife said nothing. She sat there, staring at her plate, and let him erase me in front of her entire family. That was the night I disappeared. 3 years later, I came back to buy his empire. The Sterling mansion was quiet except for the soft clink of silver against fine china, crystal glasses, polished marble floors, a dining table longer than my entire apartment. I wore the best suit I owned, one I had saved 2 months of salary to buy. In that room, it still felt small. Richard Sterling didn't need to raise his voice to control a room. When he spoke, people listened. He didn't look at his food. He looked at me. "Tell me again, Daniel," he said calmly, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. "What exactly is it you do? I keep forgetting if it's middle management or glorified paperwork." A few distant chuckles came from the far end of the table. I kept my voice steady. "I'm a senior analyst at Miller & Associates, sir. I recently completed my master's in data architecture. We're projecting strong growth this quarter." He smiled, not warmly. "Projection," he repeated. "You play with numbers that don't belong to you to earn a paycheck that barely covers my monthly gardening bill. There are men who build empires, and men who count bricks." Then he turned slightly toward Emily. "I always imagined my daughter would marry an architect." The silence that followed was thick. I looked at my wife. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. Her eyes stayed on the tablecloth. She said nothing. Richard leaned back in his chair. "I don't like weakness at my table," he continued. "If a man cannot provide at the level this family operates, perhaps he should reconsider whether he belongs here." He didn't yell. He didn't slam his fist. He simply gestured toward the door. "You may leave." And just like that, I was dismissed. I waited. Just one word from Emily. One sentence. "Father, that's enough." But she stayed silent. And in that moment I understood something clearly. It wasn't about money. It was about power. And she had chosen his. The drive home was silent. Our apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was ours. We had built it slowly. Cheap furniture, shared dreams, late-night takeout. "You didn't say anything?" I said quietly as we stepped inside. She sighed. "What did you want me to do?" "He funds the gallery, Daniel. If I fight him, he cuts everything. You know how he is." "I know how he is," I replied. "I just realized tonight, I don't know who you are." "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "It was just dinner. Just dinner." I looked around the room. The textbooks I studied at 3 a.m. The coffee table we assembled together. The life we were building. And suddenly, I felt like a guest in it. "No," I said softly. "That's how his world works. Not mine." That night I didn't sleep. At 4 a.m., when her breathing turned heavy, I got up. I didn't pack a suitcase. Too obvious. Just a small backpack. My degree, birth certificate, 2 changes of clothes, and a burner phone I had bought weeks earlier just in case. On the desk, I left 4 words on a yellow sticky note. "You chose the silence." I walked out, left the car, left the phone she tracked. 3 miles later, I got into a black SUV driven by Marcus, an old university friend who owed me nothing, yet showed up anyway. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. As we pulled onto the interstate, I threw my tracked smartphone into the back of a garbage truck. By sunrise, Daniel Sterling was gone. The first 6 months in Oakhaven were not glamorous. They were brutal. I legally changed my last name to my mother's maiden name, Vance. I didn't apply to elite firms. Richard had connections everywhere. Instead, I took a night shift data entry job at a logistics company. By day, I built something I had dreamed about for years, an algorithm designed to predict supply chain collapses before they happened. I called it the Sentinel. The apartment I lived in sat above a laundromat. The smell of detergent never left. During my first month, I applied to 12 better positions. 9 rejected me. 2 never responded. 1 offered me a salary lower than I earned before I left. I walked home in the rain that night wondering if Richard had been right. When I invested my mother's $6,000 inheritance into testing the Sentinel, the first market shift erased nearly half of it. I stared at the screen for hours. That wasn't just money. It was the last thing my mother had left me. For the first time since leaving, I almost quit. But quitting meant going back. And going back meant sitting at that table again. So I stayed. On my first birthday in Oakhaven, no one called. Not Marcus. Not Emily. Not even a wrong number. I bought a single cupcake from a grocery store and ate it alone while the washing machines downstairs shook the floor. That night, I made myself a promise. I would never feel small again. By the end of the first year, the Sentinel was working. Month 1, I lost money. Month 2, I broke even. Month 3, it flagged a disruption in Southeast Asian port traffic. I trusted it. 48 hours later, my account jumped from $4,000 to $82,000. I didn't celebrate. I reinvested. I built carefully, quietly. Within 3 years, Vance Predictive Systems controlled contracts across multiple logistics sectors. 8 figures. No headlines. No spotlight. Just control. Back at the Sterling Mansion, things were not quiet. Traditional investments were collapsing. Retail properties failing. Debt piling up. Richard didn't understand the new digital landscape. And for the first time in his life, he was bleeding. Emily had spent the first year angry, the second year searching. Private investigators found nothing. Accounts closed. No trace. It was as if I had died. One evening, she returned to our old apartment building. The landlord had repainted, but behind a loose outlet near my desk, she found the yellow sticky note. You chose the silence. She sat on the floor holding it for nearly an hour, not crying, just replaying that dinner. She told herself she stayed quiet to protect peace. But deep down, she knew the truth. She stayed quiet to protect comfort. And comfort cost her everything. That night, she used a new phone, one her father didn't monitor, and she called Oakhaven. I was standing on the balcony of my office when the call came. Private number. I hesitated. Hello. Silence. Then a breath. Daniel. Her voice broke. I changed my number so he wouldn't track this call. She whispered. Please don't hang up. 3 years. And now she chose me. My father is losing everything, she said. The bank is freezing assets. He's collapsing under the pressure. I left the house. I'm in a hotel. I don't want the money. I just want my husband back. I looked at the folder on my desk. Sterling Holdings. For 18 months, I had quietly purchased their debt. 40%. And rising. You didn't lose your husband, I said calmly. You traded him. She sobbed. Please don't destroy him. I pressed the intercom. Is the jet ready? Yes, Mr. Vance. I took out the same suit I wore the night I was told to leave. Still sharp. Still intact. Just like me. Across the country, Richard sat in his office, unaware that by morning, he would no longer control his own empire. My phone buzzed again. A message from Emily. I'll be there tomorrow. Please show mercy. I typed 4 words. You chose the silence. I slipped my wedding ring into my pocket. Not on my finger. Into my pocket. The jet engines roared. And as we lifted into the night sky, only one question remained. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., When I walk into that boardroom, will I forgive, or will I finish what he started? Subscribe to Midnight Story Room and turn on notifications. Part 2, The Reckoning, is coming soon.